Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Views News and I'm Faisal Rahman live from our Islamabad studios. Today we'll be talking about two important stories. The first one is about the LOC violations from the Indian side. According to the ISPR, more than 2,333 violations took place this year in 2020 up till now. So you can well imagine the number of violations that have been carried out by the Indians on the LOC all along the line of control. Then we'll be talking about the kind of weapon they are using, because we've also learnt that they are using some very heavy weapons there, and that has become a prime source of concern also. And we'll also be talking about the Indian atrocities in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and we'll be talking about the Indian attempts to destabilize the regional peace. That is also very important. Then in the second half of our program, we'll be talking about the visit of Abdullah to Pakistan. He was here on a 3-day official visit where he met the President, the Prime Minister, the Chief, the Foreign Minister, as well as the Chairman Senate, and also the Speaker of the National Assembly. And as we all know that India is playing a very negative role in Afghanistan, and there are the major spoilers at the moment as far as the peace process is concerned. So we'll be throwing light on that aspect too. So let me introduce you to our panelist. On my right is Air Vice Marshal retired Ikramullah Bhatti, who is a senior defence analyst. Thank you very much, Bhatti Saab, for your time. And we have with us Aqab Malik Saab, expert on foreign affairs. Thank you very much, Aqab, that you took out your time, and welcome to Pakistan. So the case is with Rana Athar Javed Saab. Thank you very much, sir, for also joining us, and welcome back to Pakistan once again. Athar Saab is the DG Pakistan House. Thank you very much. Now, sir, first of all, let's start off from this LOC issue, sir. Yesterday there was this report that a 65-year-old woman, she got injured. The day before, the kid died, few got injured. This is something which is a very regular scene, other than the kind of losses which are happening all along the LOC, including the precious lives of our soldiers. Now, sir, what exactly is Modi thinking, or Ajit Doval is thinking? Still, they have an issue in Ladakh. There is a standoff there with the Chinese. They are having a lot of economic problem in India at the moment as we speak. A lot of protests were going on in India today. I learned it from the news as well, because of a rape of a woman. So when their internal issues are so bad and so huge, how come AVM Saab, they can still afford to do all what they are doing on the line of control, sir?
Well, you see, when we talk of the Indian violation of the LOC ceasefire, this is an ongoing activity that the Indians are undertaking for the last several years. And we have seen that this practice has been going on unabated, and we have several plausible causes, objectives that the Indians may have to continue this. Firstly, of course, they like to justify the presence of 700,000 to 900,000 troops in Indian occupied Kashmir, and whereby they want to continue to maintain that narrative that the resistance in Indian held Kashmir, or the freedom movement, is not indigenous, and it is being supported or undertaken by infiltrators from Pakistan, and hence they need to stay at the LOC, keep it hot, and continue to open fire over there periodically, and with the logic that they are essentially firing at people who are trying to cross into the Indian held Kashmir. Pakistan on its side, of course, has been responding in kind. We have been undertaking punitive fire back, and also we have tried to highlight it to not only foreign diplomats, the members of the military observers group, and also to the foreign defense attaches, and we have also protested in the UN on this. But somehow we find that the Indians continue their violation of the LOC, and somehow all this activity of Pakistan in terms of drawing the attention of the world organizations, has not had any effect on the Indians as far as this policy of the Indians is concerned. But that does not mean that we should give up. I think first of all, of course, we must make sure that we respond in kind, and our response is punitive enough so that the Indians do not attempt it again. But of course, there is every possibility of this getting escalated. So, it has to be a measured and guarded response.
All right.
But it must convey Pakistan's intent that any such attempt by the Indians will not go without a response, and it will be a befitting response. At the same time, we need to continue to, of course, keep the UN Security Council in the loop, the UN Military Observer Group in the loop.
But sir, those bodies, to be very honest, are pretty useless, I would say. This has also been stated by a foreign minister that there is no point. I mean, issues are there for such a long time, Dr. Saab, and they are still pending, and they are not being looked after or looked into, actually. Now, sir, one important area as far as the LOC is concerned, normally we used to hear that when you talk about the LOC, so normally trade of fire, exchange of fire. Now we have also learned that the Indians are using some very heavy artillery there as well, and they are specifically targeting certain villages. And you can see that in the villages what exactly is happening, even children are being killed. And in response, we attack their posts. And now this has been going on for a very long time now. So do you believe that this can escalate, provided the weapon gets tougher and tougher, or bigger than before, maybe?
I think, as the Vice Marshal was saying, there is a fine line between escalation, depending on the current situation in the world as well. You've got to appreciate, on the other side, they have issues with the Chinese, and they need to make sure, if you look at it from their perspective, to make sure that Pakistan doesn't take advantage of it. So they're going to try to maintain this barrage. And it's also a demoralization of the local population on the border area, on the LOC. So I think what they're trying to do is to make sure that we are kept on our toes more than anything else.
You just kept engaged.
But this is because India has turned a corner now, and the world has turned a corner. The engagement with between the Chinese and the US, for example, see how difficult that's begun for the last maybe year and a half, 2 years now. It's increasingly getting worse. And now that Pakistan is more and more related to China, and especially in this particular area where it concerns India, India feels quite boxed in, if you think about it. And it needs it thinks that it needs to maintain that expression so that it's not being taken advantage of. Yes, we got to reply in kind, but we also have to make sure that we do not escalate on our side. And any escalation that is done must be highlighted from their side, completely into the international media, so that the world does understand that we're under threat. We're the ones who are the victims here, as opposed to the Indians who are initiating this action that they're doing. And highlight it further as much as you can. But we don't push this out into the media enough. And I think the world has thought that this is a constant effort. We need to make them understand that this is a flashpoint that could be disastrous for the world. And we're not the ones that are initiating the action. It is the Indians. And the world must get together to put pressure on them. The fact is, we're not doing enough, I don't think, in that respect.
But even if we do enough, do you think the world is going to put pressure on India?
I think the world would recognize that there is a fine line between escalation. It just can't get out of hand, and we could start mobilizing without due notice, really. You know? I think that but there's also a lot of dynamics in India that's happening because of the current government, the BJP and Modi, and his actions within destabilizing his own country, in fact, with the minorities. Not a small proportion of the population.
So many voices are being raised,
you know?
And yes.
A lot of issues. So I think India is going through a very destabilizing position itself, more than anything else. But we've got to maintain our guard. There is no choice in that Pakistan has to maintain its integrity, its territorial integrity, and not allow any infringement whatsoever as far as the Indians are concerned.
Now, Rana Sahab, a couple of points. First of all, the current standoff between the Chinese and the Indians, and the Indian aggression towards Pakistan. I mean, just imagine 2333. That's the number of violations that took place during the today is the 1st of October. Just imagine, during the previous 9 months? Just divide it and you'll see how many a month and then how many daily. Just imagine the kind of mindset the people must be having out there.
Well, first of all, I think I disagree with my colleague that Pakistan has not done enough. But the reason is the Prime Minister of Pakistan spoke eloquently and very elaborately on the issue and presented exact analysis why India is not only being cornered, but also failed to maintain peace and stability. So therefore, two of the reasons which we say that we will not be able to take any blame of their offensive operational strategy to engage negatively Pakistan armed forces under the disguise of so-called, that they say that we are supporting or abetting anything like that. But I would say also this is the second consecutive year that we have seen at the highest level at the international organization, because look, whatever we do, we have to look into international law. If the United Nations or other organization, I would say, especially the UNSC, has failed to address it, that doesn't mean that we have not achieved less. We have achieved less. We have achieved a lot. I give you an example of what is happening on international press. International press has been publishing for the past, at least 1 year since 5th August 2019. A lot of material is being published, is being highlighted. In this kind of conflict, one of the important factors is your consistency in highlighting the aggression of the opponent.
I think Pakistan has raised this issue of Kashmir on multiple occasions whenever we get a
chance.
And the Prime Minister is talking about it.
Yes, and also UN Human Rights Commission in Geneva and all other organizations. I mean, look, people may feel that it's a kind of fatigue that we are doing so much and the result is not coming. We have seen in countless conflicts in the world, like Palestine, for example, that there is a special attention to be given on your strategy. I do agree that we need to maybe create more spaces in international media and advocacy. But whatever we are doing in our limited resources is not really, I would say, we can't call it underachievement. Like on the other hand, you mentioned about the Chinese factor. This, of course, Chinese held India back, but this is their own issue which has been there forever. I mean, at least since 1960s. So we cannot really, we can't take the credit of what's happening there. But yes, one thing is important.
No, we're not taking the credit. There is it's just that we're just trying to create a scenario where, just imagine India, I mean, they are buying weapons from left, right and center.
Yeah, that
you
is
name the country
next
and
point,
now, and they're always claiming now about their new Rafales, and then, talking about getting more Su-30 MKIs.
But I have to bring you...
And, then MiG-29s more from Russia, planning to get S-400. I mean, obviously, look at the kind of spending they have. Yeah. Against China and against Pakistan, primarily. These are the two threats.
But it appears that it appears in the recent conflict that the Chinese actually taught them a very good lesson and they understood it. And it is our analysis and also in global analysis that Indians would not take further actions. If they do, Chinese would definitely retaliate. And I do agree with the Bhatti Saab on one point.
I was surprised
that we will have to pay them in coins. And also, Waqar mentioned that we should not let any, give any provision or chance for them to implement their aggression on our territory. So territorial integrity is very important because, of course, whatever happened in 5th of August still doesn't justify because it's illegitimate action according to international law. It would not help India. Yes, it is domestic feed India has given. Yes, they have contained almost all these millions of Kashmiris.
And using the media in a way that,
their media, we have seen international media like on the CNN reports and Al Jazeera and many other international outlets, BBC, also they carried out extensive reports on the plight of the Kashmiris. This is, I think, is a kind of success. If we look back 2 years before.
You believe that Pakistan has been able to internationalize the
Yes,
issue?
Absolutely.
During the last 2 years or so.
Yes, I think so.
I think when the Prime Minister talks about Kashmir or Islamophobia, for that matter, even in the previous one, and this year as well. So I think a lot is happening on that front as well, but a lot more still needs to be done.
Now, sir, that we
another
agree with,
area, and that is about the regional peace. Now, sir, do you believe that Afghanistan is a country which is, I think, one of those unfortunate nations on earth, sir, that they have been suffering for the last God knows how many years? And you talk about the Soviet invasion, you talk about the American invasion. They do not have an economy. There is an absolute chaos, uncertainty on top. And then the fallout factor is on all the regional countries, including Pakistan. I think we are having the maximum. So in certain, let's suppose this peace process goes through, deal is done, there is a certain time frame given. And at the same time, sir, I believe that the vacuum that will be created once the Americans would leave would either be filled in by the Chinese or to some extent by the neighboring countries, including Pakistan. So do you think that is the right time to, once this issue is sorted, then that could be really, that issue could be actually shelved properly so that people can, see it from that level?
Well, you see, as far as Afghanistan is concerned, in my view, the foremost interest of Pakistan is that Afghanistan must become peaceful, and the first fruit of the result that we want out of that status is that there should be no threat of any terrorist activity getting launched from Afghanistan into Pakistan, which is currently still going on. We have TTP and other affiliates who have joined together, and even ISIS is still there. So there is a very serious threat that continues to exist, and that is the first, I think, priority or the highest priority that Pakistan ought to have as and when peace hopefully returns to Afghanistan. Then, of course, we have the repatriation of refugees. Then we like to have trade with Afghanistan and through Afghanistan into Central Asia, and maybe they become part of CPAC, and then hopefully the moment this interdependence.
This TAPI, this CASA 1000,
yes,
there's so many projects. Yeah.
So, peace has a lot of dividends. And of course, when the Americans leave and Pakistan is saying that it should not be a hasty withdrawal, they should be progressive, gradual, so that the Afghans can stand on their own feet and take care of their own internal security, so that there is no threat that emanates out of their country. And the Taliban have already promised in the initial deal with the Americans that they will not let their soil be used against, while they did say the Americans and American allies, but essentially I should assume that it meant all neighboring countries, the region and the world. Even Mr. Abdullah, when he was here, he also said the same thing, that they would be interested in not letting their country being used against any other country. So, I think that is the first interest, and when the Americans hopefully leave, I am sure Chinese are best positioned, and they are already in that process to, of course, make inroads and of course support Afghanistan in their rehabilitation and reconstruction
and the hydrocarbons.
Yes. So I think the biggest player in that post peace scenario is China into Afghanistan, and of course all the regional countries would chip in, because Afghanistan by itself will certainly not be in a position to stand on its own feet and undertake this colossal activity of reconstruction and rehabilitation.
Which is based on war economy has to get stabilized at
Definitely.
some stage.
While it is the primary responsibility of America and NATO, who actually have brought Afghanistan to this state, it is primarily their responsibility to make sure that Afghanistan stands on feet. They are supposed to.
But so the kind of recession we are going through, or which most likely will go through because of this COVID, I don't think Americans will ever be able to spend that kind of money in Afghanistan. Obviously, this is exactly what Trump is thinking. Most likely, he wants to have a proper withdrawal and eventually see what happens. Now, Dr. Saab, 2 points here. First of all, I would like you to continue from the same point. And secondly, let me also ask you that when you would look at a person like Abdullah visiting Pakistan and having some very interesting meetings, including the one with the Prime Minister, and then there was this tweet, and the Prime Minister in fact used this word, interesting. That's a very meaningful word. We had a very interesting conversation. God knows what exactly they talk about. We just got to know that regional issues and whatever. But this was very productive, and a lot of people who happened to meet Abdullah said that his body language was so positive. and the way he was meeting people, the way he was talking. I mean, he really wants that, forget about the past, let's move forward. So if that is the approach, I think we should all welcome it.
Well, I think Afghanistan and Pakistan have no choice. They have no choice but to move forward. Whatever happened in the past, we've got to let bygones be bygones, whatever happened. If we rely on history, we can go 100 years back in this region and blame each other for whatever happened. Any atrocities, anything, we can bring anything up. Like the Palestinian conflict or the Balkans or anything, and we can just highlight that and then just fall back into conflict again. I think it's a mature and professional response that he realizes that Afghanistan needs to move forward. The Americans are pulling out. Pakistan is the neighbor, and without Pakistan, it's going to be very difficult. And I think we also recognize that we need Afghanistan with a semblance of peace. The BRI would be helped in that respect. Trade would become better for all nations. Central Asian linkages would become better. I think it's a win-win for everybody, really. And I think if they can talk about these things, they can talk about the future, and the reconstruction will be part of that, no doubt. And if we can play a part in that as well, with the activities and building Pakistan through the CPEC, for example, and the expertise we've gained through that, we can help with the reconstruction of Afghanistan in that respect as well. And no doubt the Chinese are going to get involved, as the AVM mentioned. That I think that we're going to move forward on this. However, there is always going to be a sticking point. There always are going to be parties that are not happy about this situation. There are a lot of power centers in Afghanistan and in Pakistan that are not going to be happy about this, and they're going to rile against whatever peace process there is, because they all want a part of it, and it's going to be a shuffling match to see who gets what portion of whatever they get, of the rewards or the bounties in the future. So some people may not like the fact that they're going to lose out, and there are going to be many parties that are not going to really win out in this. But overall, we're looking at a positive future. It's just a matter of balancing what you have in the future, what you can see and what you need, and actually strategizing in terms of business, security, international trade.
Most of your policies should be in alignment.
That is.
Exactly.
And the truth of the matter is Afghanistan recognizes that BRI, although COVID has upset the balance, there's a lot of issues with connectivity and funding, and there's been a little stall.
But that's
in the process.
temporary.
It is a temporary thing, because we know we're going towards a vaccine, and we will have protocols in place if anything like this happens again with another virus, that will recognize how to deal with things. It's the practice run, you could say, that Afghanistan knows that Asia is the future. And to be part of it it's in the center of it.
Exactly.
And it can be a very welcome part of it. It has trillions in rare earth minerals, for example, which is the future of high technology and the future of the world in that respect. It could essentially be a kingpin in this.
Exactly.
If it
Just
plays
like
its
lithium
cards
in
right.
Congo, for that matter.
But if it plays its cards right, and it does look at
Emeralds
its
in
own,
Afghanistan.
yes.
Now, Rana Sahab, two other points. One is regarding the economy. Obviously, everybody wants that the economy should flourish, so everybody should get a bigger share. Second is about the ethnic issues there in Afghanistan. You're talking about Pashtuns. Primarily, the general perception of the Afghan people is that Pakistan has supported only Pashtuns, not Afghanistan as a whole. So there are Tajiks, there are Uzbeks, there are so many other people. And then you're talking about the Taliban also, primarily, sir. How do you see all these being placed? You know, it's just like a jigsaw puzzle. Somebody has to be placed somewhere. Do you have the secret for that?
I think it's an open secret, first of all, about what you mentioned is very important point. You are yourself as an expert in economy and all that. Economic dividend would be dividend of peace will be economics. Free movement of people between two countries without suspicion and all that. And of course, the security on the border side of Afghanistan, which our colleagues indicated, because of the fear and fact that there are bases. And actually, I happened to be there with Abdullah there, and we interacted. I asked him a question, the same one. It's the patience which is required. And Abdullah pointed out that.
How much more, sir?
I think the patience, if for the peace, if you need the patience, it can be extended because there is no bloodshed and there is a peace and understanding. Indication.
Today there was this blast.
Yes.
11 people died in that.
Yeah.
6 security personnel, 1 kid, I think. And
Well, we talked. You mentioned about the spoilers. The spoilers, the sticking points will remain there. This is exactly what the regional countries, one of the regional countries, especially India, wants to scuttle this process. And we have an understanding. The United States has clearly told India to stay away. But the issue is that the entities which are brought from outside, Daesh, around 4,000 to 6,000 fighters,
Hezbollah, Ihrar.
yeah, from Syria, they were transported by Ajit Doval in 12 visits, which he made over the number of 3-4 years. They are there, and what will happen to them? Because there is a serious discussion between Taliban and Afghan forces and Afghan government to create an understanding. Because look, Al-Qaeda and any other organization which is non-Afghan, they will be expelled if they try to scuttle the process, and they will be neutralized by the NATO US forces, because they have to protect their peace, broader peace idea. They are withdrawing. It's not because of maybe Afghanistan. It's because of United States' own changing global perspectives, because of the President Trump's vision. We do not know what happened.
These are the people who are not accepted anywhere in the world.
We do not know what happened in
Expel them.
November
Where,
election.
sir?
Yes.
Now that is also another part, because I still remember, I'll quote this statement of Hamid Karzai. Once he was out, and I remember first tenure of Ashraf Ghani as a president, he said, well, there are so many mystery helicopters. So, sir, I mean, those helicopters must be flown by somebody. I'm sure there has to be some sort of an ownership of those helicopters as well. Somebody must be financing. How many trips, God knows. I mean, what sort of helicopters are you talking about? So obviously that is to carry people or bring in people.
That's what I was talking about. And the other issue you mentioned, very, very important, which will be the basis of intra-Afghan dialogue, which has been the basis, about the all-inclusive approach to stabilize Afghanistan. Giving a balanced ethnic, the share of the population share, like the Pashtuns and other Tajiks, all of them, the Persian speaking, some province, Bamiyan province, because the issue here is not only a balancing, because it will be a very difficult act in the first place. So it may take time, but they are on the course, because this is on discussion agenda, that how will they really create a balance where all minorities or others, majorities are represented proportionately. In the current scenario, if we see the Pashtuns were underrepresented in all sections, because they are looking for.
That was done by design in the previous government.
Yes, but now
no major position was given to them.
Yeah, you said the positive vibes which came through, by the body language of Abdullah Abdullah. It's a fact. We had a very brief conversation. He had really shown that, demonstrated, because the consideration in India and other parts are.
He really meant what he said, or was he told to say so?
No, we would not be able to scramble that kind of, or maybe scratch that kind of emotional intelligence. But what I would say to you is, it always appears, if he is saying something, you would see that he was talking extempore, he was reading from paper, but he was very comfortable. He was not jittery. He was positive. He was forthcoming.
Do you see his role increasing in the future?
I would say yes, because as a chairman of the High Peace Council, and he brought a very large delegation as well, a lot of number of people, women represented in that, and that is one of the things which Taliban and Afghan other groups will have to understand, that whatever future is ahead for Afghans, there would be representation from women, and these all things are being discussed at the moment. So we should hope positively. We should not, over optimistic or too much enthusiasm in it. But a realistic assessment is that there is a very good chance that it will be an Afghan-led, as it is Afghan-owned. So we can facilitate them. We help them. So the refugees we have here. He also mentioned about Afghan refugees, by the way, that they want honorable return of the Afghan refugees back to Afghanistan, which we think their economy is stabilizing. They are doing
fail to
better.
understand this thing, sir, that, I mean, they were here, they had Pakistani passports, they had Pakistani identity cards, they had bought properties. This was their third, maybe fourth generation in certain cases. I mean, they were doing proper businesses. I mean, even in Islamabad, go to the G sector. That was the first time we had those kebabs and the typical, when I still remember way back in 80s, I guess, they were there. So the point is that you pick up somebody who's already settled and tell him to leave and go back to his country, where there's no hope, there's nothing except for war.
But there is no forceful expatriation as well. There is no, we are not saying. The situation is when feasible and they're agreeing on something, framework, this will happen. I know Aqab is shaking his head.
I might agree with him.
And that's what he does.
Let me put this question to
Bhatti Saab and then
Bhatti Saab, because he's going to give us a very neutral opinion. Now, sir,
mine is neutral
return
as well.
of the refugees primarily. So whenever we talk about Pak-Afghan dialogue or something regarding the peace process, there are certain, we always end up hearing, well, Afghanistan should make sure that their soil should not be used against Pakistan. Okay, well done. Good enough, sir. And then there's number 2, number 3. And again, sir, one of the last ones would include about the return of the refugees. Honestly speaking, sir, it wasn't this government. I think it was the previous government. Sir, few of my friends who were there at that particular, I mean, it's great to, show certain visuals and, ribbons and everything, decorated buses going back to Afghanistan. In reality, sir, things were literally opposite.
Well, you see, refugee is an international problem or a global problem, and every refugee does not return back to his country, and they do adopt the new country as their next place of residence. There are laws to manage this, and I think with people living in Pakistan for the last 40
if you give them a good option, you can have the 100% data of those people.
So
there is trust deficit.
So they are here for over 40 years.
Exactly.
They are born over here. They're educated. They have jobs. They have businesses. They're married. They're
Sir,
settled.
Afghani people speak fluent Potawari.
Yes. So
those who have lived in this part.
I think this will have to be looked at very pragmatically. And we'll have to, I think Pakistan will have to have a policy on this and accept a significant portion of these refugees as its own citizens, grant them citizenship. And then, of course, as and when the economic situation in Afghanistan improves, it should be a voluntary return, and not that they are.
I think the kind of population growth.
Yes, exactly. That's what I mentioned. That
we can always absorb about 5 million. There shouldn't be a problem.
So, because that is that is what is going to get us the goodwill of not only these people but of Afghanistan as well, and it is going to, I think, strengthen and improve the relationship. Because if you look at the history of relationship of Pakistan and Afghanistan, it has been turbulent for at least for 65 years out of 70 years.
That's true.
And here we have an opportunity where, when we look at Dr. Abdullah, he has been, before his visit, the strongest critic of Pakistan.
Yes.
And very, acrimonious critic. So here he is, where he is, as all my colleagues have mentioned, with a, with an open mind.
He is here as a share of Panjshir.
And he has good credentials. He is in a good position. Although he is a medical doctor. He spent a part of his initial medical professional career in Peshawar. So he knows Pakistan well. He has a Pashtun father. His mother is an Uzbek. So
Tajik mother.
And he is well placed for a significant position in next political dispensation, whatever it is. So I think when a person like him comes to Pakistan with such positive vibes.
So you believe that the ice is melting now?
Definitely, definitely. I am quite hopeful.
That's a very positive one. So whenever we talk about Muslim countries or neighboring countries, especially neighboring Muslim countries, there are certain words normally which you always end up reading. We have historical relationship. We have this cultural relationship, religious if it's a Muslim country, traditional. But sir, as far as Afghanistan is concerned, honestly speaking, one thing which we know is about the Afghan transit trade, and the second is about the bilateral trade, which is, God knows what are the numbers. It's less than 1 billion or 1.5 billion, because with Iran it's less than 1 billion, alhamdulillah. because we are going like this in every department, especially when it comes to exports. But there is a lot of smuggling taking place. Now, sir, and again, Afghanistan is a landlocked country. Pakistan is the option, which makes a lot of sense. And again, historically, they've been using this. But, sir, looking at the current economics and the current digits of 2 + 2 = 4, I think it has to be much more than that. The reality, because now we're talking about 2020 and beyond. Forget about that 19th century school of thought, which still maybe exists in certain parts of Afghanistan, even if it does in Pakistan also. But time to move on. It's about internet, it's about technology, it's about .com generation, sir.
You know, it's how difficult it's been to get into the 21st century in this country. Imagine what Afghanistan's been through for 40 years of war, degraded, nothing left, literally, just with the exception of a couple of cities that have been built up a little bit, for the rest of the countryside. Some reconstruction, but in essence, very war-weary, tired of it all. They want to move forward. And there's a burgeoning youth population there that really wants to be part of the global community and move forward and progress. But the problem is there are many forces that are going to hold that back, who don't believe in the technology, don't think that...
so if you are referring to Taliban, don't you think their mindset has also changed over a period of time? Now the narrative is pretty different.
Well, partly,
or
yes.
they are still the same.
But they have the same philosophy, don't they? So they're going to stick to that. I'm not going to talk about the Taliban so much right now, but let me explain this. Just before I begin that, just a counter on one thing. No, the Afghans were not happy to be sent back. They're born and brought up here, part of this country. Yeah? I remember a few years ago, well before Imran Khan came into government, that I had a talk with Shireen Mazari, and I mentioned on this subject matter, why don't you give them citizenship? They've earned it. They live here. They're part of this country. They speak the same language as anybody else here. And you resolve a lot of the issues. You have a growth rate, population growth rate of about 4 or 5 million a year after death. And they're just one little point of that. It's been here for 40 years. It is insignificant to make that an issue. If you make them part of it, you build relationships on both sides. The fact is, they'll be part of this society and that society, and they'll be the bridge between us.
Exactly.
Now, if you chop the bridge up
I totally agree with
and
that.
break the bridge up, you're going to cause polarization and resentment on that side. And that's what might have happened. But we can reassess and we can re-begin that process, I think. And
anything and everything can be done if there is a will.
And that's part of the trade process as well. They know this country. They get to know the other country in Afghanistan, and they can build that trade up as well. Now,
channelize them, no?
Yes, that's the whole point. So I just want to make that point. Nobody was happy. I remember it was forceful repatriation. People were forced to finish their shops in different areas. I'm not sure if you've been to Khyber Pakhtunkhwa as much and seen what was happening there.
I think it would be unfair because
no, I'm sorry,
it is under UNHCR and there is no force. You can't force.
So that is the academic.
It's a legal
you read a lot of reports, but on the ground reality
because
very different.
Because I believe so. Anyway, I'll just come to you, sir, to get your narrative.
So the next part is, I think the future is bright. I think that Afghanistan does want to go into the future, but there are forces to hold it back. Because there's a lot of distrust within that society, is there not? There's a lot of polarization within that society, whether it's religious in nature, and it is, or it's the modernism as opposed to the conservatism. There's going to be a big shift, and they have to deal with that. They had massive chasm, fissures between them, and they were fighting for it. They were killing each other. Now they have to come to the table, and it's going to have to bridge those gaps that they've made for themselves. They're going to have to get to know each other. They're going to have to find ways and means to ameliorate that division. It's easy to break something. It's very difficult to heal it. You look at America, for example. Over the last 4 years, and I was there for a year, I've seen it break up. Polarized completely, and people say now the new government may come in, if it comes in, if the Democrats come in, and I say no, it's not going to change overnight. It's going to take years more. It could take decades to heal these wounds, and you'll see the wounds openly, and that's what's happened. And Afghanistan's much worse, and so you've got to realize reality on the ground is very different from the academic.
Time is yours now.
Yeah, actually, I'm not an academic. I'm a practitioner. I live mostly on the ground. And just to say one thing, that we have to be optimists when there is a negotiation inter-Afghan dialogue. They know much better than us that how they have to live. And they have been, as he said, mentioned, that have been at their throats all these four decades. But we also should remember that the foreign forces and now the foreign militant organizations based in Afghanistan, they also created, they have contributed to that the big gulf they have now. But I would say that since United States, which is the biggest power considered and the biggest contributor when this all started, they have acknowledged it, that there is, the ice is melting. Taliban are understanding the contemporary behavior of the young generation, and they are trying to deploy, or on the negotiation table they are bringing some PhDs to discuss. They are developing, and it's a fact because they have changed, they are trying to develop their own systems. I can tell you that there are people maybe under training in different parts of the world to contribute from modern education type, in agriculture, in mining. There are experts being prepared by Taliban. So the idea of the previous Taliban.
So these are the moderate, liberated Taliban.
These are the one who want to coexist with their fellow countrymen, because they know, and both parties know, there is no other way out.
I think acceptability.
The only way out
that's
is
there,
to talk
everything
to
is going
each
to be
other.
sorted out. Now,
Yes.
one quick comment, sir, because I was watching one of the Indian talk shows on YouTube, and I got to hear about this. I mean, there were two important points. One was about that the Indians believe that it should be Afghan-owned, Afghan-led, and Afghan-controlled.
Oh yeah?
They added the third word. Now, I just want a quick comment on that. And also, do you believe that, sir? Let's suppose if Afghanistan issue is sorted out in whatever way, whether through a war or civil war or whatever. Peace in Afghanistan, do you think, is directly proportional towards a very strong indigenous, homegrown movement in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir? Sir?
Well, that's very, very important point. First thing is that the Indians, this is their narrative they have mentioned now, but the Indians are the one who were controlling the violence. And Afghanistan will be controlled. When it is Afghan-led and owned, when you own something, you control. So I think it's just try to create another debate, and India was negatively engaged and is negatively engaged. So that's for sure. The second point, I would say, to be honest, as you said, it's indigenous movement, and it's people can see that they're being confined in like more prison. It's all in illegally Indian occupied Kashmir. I think we have to keep up the support, not only moral support, the political support, as the Prime Minister spoke.
The diplomatic support.
No, all of it, whatever we can, except...
Let's talk about the fourth support.
The fourth support is to mobilize United Nations and other organs and create a network of more, the Western diplomats.
The Indians
those
fear
who are
that once
supporting-
this issue is sorted out, most of these Taliban will be free, doing nothing, having free holidays. I mean, maybe they'll be looking towards that side because they want to do something.
No,
they're full of energy.
I do not agree with that. Yes, we are fearful of whatever Daesh Indians brought into and supporting TTP. That's, yes, we are fearful of them. And United States has been informed.
I think that's a great strength we have.
And we are going to defend against
right.
any Indian aggression.
Anyway, Rana Saab,
anywhere.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saab. Bhatti Saab, it was a pleasure to have you too. And that's all we have for this week, rather. I'll see you inshallah on Monday. Till then, you take good care. Khuda Hafiz. Have a great weekend.